To begin with a few questions, because if the topic is inclusion, every one of us has wisdom and experience and perspective. And I also recognize that in this kind of asking a question in the moment, in the service, is a very short form response format. And not everyone thinks in this way. Not everybody thinks in a way that lends itself to immediate response. That is fine. Just listen if that is best for you. And you're welcome to come to me later. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So we begin. When when have you felt welcomed? When have you felt welcomed? If something comes to mind, you want to shout it out. I'll repeat it for the microphone. Just something brief. When have you felt welcomed? When you came here. Thank you, Tim. Tim is one of our best publicity kind of guys, so thank you. When someone greeted you personally. It doesn't have to be just church, it's okay. When have you felt truly welcomed? Oh, when you walk towards this building, there are native plants instead of turf. So the landscape is part of the welcome. Ooh, thank you, Joe. Going home to see grandma. Oh, yeah, yeah. When someone remembers your name. Mm-hmm. Good. All right. Okay. Now, if you're someone who's had a chance to host something, to invite someone, to prepare a space for people you may or may not know, just offer that. Have you done that and have you enjoyed that process? And some of us, it strikes fear in the heart of us to do that, and I understand that. For some of us, I think that has the hosting is something of a joy. Is that the case? And when have you kind of felt joy in welcoming people in? Tim? When you've hosted 12 foreign exchange students. Thank you. Okay, that one needs a little bit more thought. That's okay. Teaching classes. Great. When you've had your international students over for a meal or taking them along with you somewhere. Mhm. Well, I think these invitations for the auction and dinners or teas or so on, that's all part of that kind of work, getting ready to receive people. Now, I acknowledge that the act of hosting or the act of hospitality, the work of that is sometimes we don't think of quite everything, and that's okay. I think of hospitality as kind of a work in progress. It is a constant practice. And some days, hospitality, sometimes making an invitation is just doing the best we can, but still recognizing another and saying, please come in. Now, but let me ask the bigger question. I want to ask the bigger question, which is why do we welcome? Like, why do we invite people in? Why do we do this work? Why do we put ourselves out there to say, please come on in? Why does the church say all are welcome? We have a greeter team. We say, we encourage people to invite their friends and neighbors. Come on over to church. But why do we welcome? Why do we do that in the first place? Jean. Ooh. We're not alone in the world, and when we meet each other, we reinforce each other. To share. Mhm. Yes, sir. Yep, sucks to be alone, nice to have company. There we go. Put it simply. Yes, Joe. I'm sorry? Strength in numbers. There we go. Yes, Bill. Better together. Now, I want to admit, we must be forthright here, we try, that there is a certain degree of self-interest for the sake of, uh, in doing well with greeting and doing well with invitation and welcoming people in. There is a certain degree of self-interest for the sake of preserving the existence of the congregation. We need flow of people. Any religious body needs a certain flow of visitors and guests who might decide they want to stay and become members and become part of the congregation and contribute and enlarge the circle of care. But I will offer at the very much also that the numbers are not the point. I mean, people love to see a sanctuary with a lot of people. I mean, let me not underestimate that. But the numbers is not actually the point. It's what was said in the course of this, the people and the relationships and what emerges from being together. That is the point. I so appreciate the note from Christian scripture that says, wherever two or three are gathered, there is a living of purpose and hope and love, wherever two or three are gathered. It was a good thing to remember in all those days of Zoom only conversations, right? When we were asynchronous and dispersed and couldn't be with one another, two or three was worth the effort. It is always worth the effort. And part of what's also in that effort is the readiness, the preparing of the space. If we understand that that connection, that providing the invitation, that providing the welcome connects us and energizes us, then we work towards being able to do so, to being available whenever a person needs a moment or a space. I so appreciate how much care goes into the existence of this building, for example, and the care of it, the cleaning of it, the design of it, and much more. Because I believe the church should always be available as a sanctuary. It should always be available as a place to pause and breathe. It is one of the most powerful services that we can offer into the world is being such a space. And how much we need such spaces now. Spaces where there is not actually that much expectation, where you're simply invited to be. Because you and I and our neighbors and our friends, the people we don't even know, are holy and whole people simply as we and they are. Because in this moment, our essential humanity and our right to exist is under attack. In this moment, simply creating space and saying yes and inviting people in is a revolutionary act because we recognize the humanity and the dignity of every person. The work that has gone into this effort of humanity and care and mutuality in our society is far broader than we realize. There is a certain benefit from all of this attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion. There is a certain benefit to say, how does this impact our lives? How has this been showing up in our lives that we feel the absence when these things are pulled. How important it has been to have grants and education and the arts all under the umbrella of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, to be recruiting from historically Black colleges and universities, to develop science and technology, engineering, and math programs that encourage students from racially diverse, low economic resources areas. I mean, that work alone, just simply creating STEM resources and having access to it from the whole range of the Peoria area is in this moment, is happening on this small scale. I've got to see it when my son was part of the Destination Technology program in partnership with Caterpillar to encourage interest in engineering. It's an extracurricular program that includes a tour of the engineering programs at the University of Illinois. And my son had a chance to participate. It's simply open to children, to students who seem to have an aptitude and an interest in engineering related programs. And the students who attend, when I had a chance to drop him off, the students who attend really reflect the entire racial spread of Peoria. And simply having access to taking a college tour, that by itself is a phenomenal resource for so many of our families who couldn't possibly afford to make that happen by themselves. This diversity and this equity and this inclusion is deeply intertwined, deeply interrelated across race and economy and ability and class and all the stations. This reactivity to this, what has been in place and what has been growing for so many decades in our country, is an effort to sweep away resources and mechanisms and education for, say, including women in professional life, for giving jobs to veterans. Boy, I hope the veterans really get loud about that scene. For providing access to education for folks with different learning abilities and different physical disabilities, and so much more. That's just having this conversation about the impact of diversity, equity, and inclusion shows how much more has been done in our institutions, how much has already been in place, even as we have so much more to do. So I want to invite us beyond this moment to keep going into that deeper dive into diversity, equity, and inclusion to really understand what those mean. And not let those who would upend language and effort and pervert diversity, pervert it and only define it in terms of literally black and white, and not let it be reduced to the code word of DEI. Be curious and say, why wouldn't you want to be more fair with people? Why not include people? Why not be more diverse? This is who is here. Not let those who would narrow the world and limit who is a valid person and who can vote. Why I so appreciate this concept of welcome and inclusion and invitation. And I want to share one of the ones I know better from the Western Christian teachings. And I want which is partially the way of St. Benedict a little bit. And I want to speak to this core Christian teaching as a way to give language to counter what is being perpetrated in Jesus' name and in the name of Christian nationalism. We don't let the people define the terms. We are keeping the terms that are also true and rich and not exclusive. Now, the way of St. Benedict is founded on hospitality, being able to receive weary travelers day or night. And it's based on Jesus' call to love your neighbors, to understand the holy is present in every person. In recent years, people have really embraced one of the books, Radical Hospitality, Benedict's Way of Love by Father Daniel Hoffman and Lonnie Collins Pratt. That book by itself is a gentle and human conversation and narrative, and it raises good questions about our attitudes and our readiness to receive. And I also appreciate one of the pieces I remember from that, reading that book way back in the beginning of divinity school, in fact, was part of the point was that, well, one of the stories included that the monk who was helping, the monk that was providing some service to those who were traveling and needing kind of late night, uh, something to eat and some place to sleep, that the monk who was helping wasn't actually all that happy about it. Like the monk was a little bit grumpy and a little bit put out and a little bit inconvenienced. And, they weren't trying to not say that. They were doing what they should have been doing. They were doing what they were committed to. But, the person telling the story could tell that the monk wasn't like in a very good mood. And I want to offer that as saying the effort of the inclusion, the effort of invitation, doesn't always expect that we are always going to be in a good mood about it either. That we always don't have to just put on the happy face. Like we don't have to be false in our emotions, but just committed to the act and committed to being as generous as we can be in the moment, even when we are in fact really grumpy and really upset and having a hard time. That there is value in simply following that practice of welcome. Part of what the point of the hospitality is in this effort of inclusion is to shift what is happening, to change what's going on. It is about disruption. Ryan Dunn, Minister of Online Engagement with the United Methodist Church, talks about disruption. He says we could use more disruptions. I know that might be the last thing you want to hear on a Sunday morning, is more disruption. But he says we could use more disruptions because of how we see people being treated, how children are treated when they're at the border, how food insecurity, and much more. He says we need to let go of a need to shape people to our own image. We extend radical hospitality when we include people within a community without the expectation that they will fully conform to it. And we may even concede some of our community identity in order to be more hospitable to those whom we welcome. Radical hospitality sends a message beyond you are welcome to join us, come in and be like us. It says we see you and we want to join you wherever you are. He says radical hospitality doesn't just ask, do you want to be with us? It says, how can we be with you? And I think that's where this conversation about inclusion is so rich. It's not simply about how do we prepare the space to welcome people in, which is essential, but also how can we adapt the space to make it easier for people to be wherever they are and who they are. One of those examples is we had a member who really needed a scent-free zone, for example, and we have that in our sanctuary. And that didn't solve all the challenges that this member had in coming to church in person and so on. It was tough for a lot of different reasons for them to come, but they knew they had a spot and a safe place. And other people, when they come in, can also say, oh, if I need that, I can go there. So we changed a little bit to do that. So we're really trying to create spaces that are more welcoming, not just for our own benefit, not just because it's a good idea, but because we want to be really changed by each other. And we recognize the benefit of the range of humanity around us in doing so. We want to create a space that welcomes folks who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning. We want a space that is more physically accessible. We want a space that is more accessible for folks who are neurodivergent, who have a hard time navigating social spaces. All of that understanding, every time we make a little effort for that, is part of the disruption, a part of what shifts our lives as well. Those of us here get to think about other people's needs, and that is inclusion in process. How do I think about people is transformed when I commit to being part of someone else's story rather than only operate from my own. In the readings, Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt speaks about diversity in Unitarian Universalism and how it has been a challenge for so long. And she does so from a place of experience. She's been UU all her life. She is a Black woman in our tradition. She has been in leadership. She is fantastic and generous in person. And that piece, it's hard work, is from a collection of works from Black UUs from decades ago. And the concern is no less relevant. The work is no less real and ongoing. And we keep practicing. We keep making the effort. We keep wondering, even when we know there's certain areas where we really are challenged, especially with the racial diversity. We keep making that commitment to working on it again and again. And let the disruption of how we think and how we remember and how we act change us. I do need to say something about the National Park Service and the Stonewall Memorial. Erasure of trans folks from that website is erasure of history. I went to the website and checked it out. I'd seen what people had said, but I went to the website myself and saw that there's an L and a G and a B, and there's no T. There's no T anywhere. And this is, in fact, erasure because the part of the whole movement was happening because of folks who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color, of trans women who are at the core of the protests against police raids, who were doing good work, taking care of the queer youth who had no place to turn in that community, who were entirely impoverished. Marsha P. Jackson, Sylvia Rivera, they were there doing this work. They need to be part of that history and part of that recognition. And I'll say, here's a little thing that I did this morning before I came to church, which was I went to going to the site, the National Park Service site. At the bottom of the site says, was this information helpful? Yes or no? And I clicked no and added a comment, history needs to include trans people. It's a little thing, but there are things to disrupt what's going on. The work continues. The work truly goes on. And all of it matters. All of it helps. We have a task of holding on to what's already been learned, what's already been known and developed and put into place as much as possible. Sandy Stone, I think a queer artist, was talking about we have out trans people in public office. We have trans medicine. We have trans scholarships. We have trans attorneys. We're not going away. And this is true for all of the people impacted by the removal of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that are happening right now. It counts for everybody, everybody. The work of inclusion is sacred work that we can allow to transform us because it doesn't leave us where we started. Rather, we get the chance to do everything in our power to create safer spaces, to hold to what we know is true about the range of human expression and their experience of life, and to be open to what we can learn from one another. As my colleague, the Reverend Julian Jamaica Soto says, to be free, you must embrace the breadth of your own existence without apology, even if they try to take it from you. To actually be free, you must know and you must fight for the entire universes inside everyone else. To fight for the entire universes inside everyone else. This is our sacred work This is our practice of inclusion. So let us go forward and continue to create such spaces of promise for ourselves and for each other. Amen.